Welcome back to another episode of Out Loud Geek, where we discuss news and views about pop culture, science fiction, fantasy, food, cooking, the outdoors, and more. It's time, once again, for another depressing dose of dismal Disney. Just how bad is the Marvels movie? Well, it's so bad that even Disney has now given up on it. In an article shared by Variety on December 3rd, and which is entitled "The Marvels Ends Box Office Run as Lowest Grossing MCU Movie in History," the article reads, "There's nothing heroic about the final box office performance of The Marvels. The superhero sequel is officially the lowest grossing installment in the history of the Marvel Cinematic Universe." And I had talked about that in my previous video, which was part 16 of my Who Will Be the Biggest Flop video series. After 4 weeks on the big screen, the comic book tentpole is running out of steam, with $80 million in North America and $197 million globally. Aw, doesn't that just break your heart? There would typically be optimism that attendance could rebound over the busy holiday season, but Disney apparently doesn't expect that to be the case because it won't be reporting the film's weekend box office results any longer. Tisk tisk, Disney must be embarrassed by how badly The Marvels is doing. Now, while this may impact the accuracy of my Who Will Be the Biggest Flop video series, by doing this, Disney doesn't even want its stockholders to know just how bad this movie is performing. That's what this decision is telling me. The studio wrote on Sunday in a note to press, quote, "With the Marvels box office now winding down, we will stop weekend reporting of international/global grosses on this title," unquote. But the film isn't leaving theaters just yet, and the $220 million plus budgeted tentpole is expected to play through New Year's. Actually, its production budget is closer to around $274.8 million, and that's the number that's reported on the website The Numbers, and Collider published an article on November 30th listing the movie's production budget at $273.8 million. So I don't believe that the production budget is as low as $220 million. But by underreporting the movie's production budget, Variety is showing once again its efforts to protect Disney as well as mislead Disney's investors. This memo signals that The Marvels is not expected to generate notable coinage during the rest of December. Over the weekend, the movie tumbled to 11th place on the box office charts with just $2.4 million in its fourth outing. That's what the movie earned domestically. The Marvels opened on November 10th with $46 million domestically to land the worst debut in the MCU, the franchise's rare misfire out of the gate. Things then only got gloomier. Aww, as I said earlier, doesn't that just break your heart? Ticket sales cratered by 78% in its sophomore outing to cement another ignominious record, the biggest second weekend drop of the series. Now, as the film nears the end of its theatrical run, box office revenues won't top 2008's The Incredible Hulk, which was $264 million not adjusted for inflation, which previously stood as the lowest grossing entry. And I have talked about all of the movie's negative record-breaking achievements in several of my Who Will Be the Biggest Flop videos, as well as a video that I released specifically about why The Marvels failed. This degree of disappointment is unusual because Marvel is the most commercially successful film franchise of all time, with $29.8 billion earned globally across 33 films. Moreover, the passionate MCU fanbase has turned out for less embraced entries. Well, while that may be a matter of opinion, the fact that The Marvels is the lowest grossing movie of all time for the MCU means that it's indeed the least embraced entry. In my opinion, that really isn't something that's debatable because the numbers speak for themselves. This February's Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania managed to generate $214 million domestically and $476 million worldwide, even though the film was saddled with worse reviews than The Marvels. Whether people go to theaters to see a movie doesn't necessarily reflect professional critics' reviews. Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania was only the beginning of a long list of failed movies that Disney released this year. Directed by the woke identity politics activist Nia DaCosta, the action-adventure spotlights a trio of spandex-covered female heroes, Brie Larson as Captain Marvel, Tiona Paris as Monica Rambeau, and Iman Vellani as Ms. Marvel, who are tasked in the movie with saving the universe from forces that seek to destroy it. Reviews were mixed, but a bigger problem is that the Marvels ended up bearing the brunt of the audience's burnout toward this ever-expanding franchise, one that spans the big and small screen. This year alone, Marvel has released 2 other movies and 3 Disney Plus TV series. While franchise and genre burnout may be a small contributing factor to this particular movie's rejection at the box office, audience burnout has become one of several favorite excuses used by studios, the trades, and shill media sites to avoid talking about the harsher truths as to why movies like The Marvels are failing. What differentiates The Marvels is that not only is it the biggest flop for the MCU of all time, it's also one of the biggest woke identity politics flops of all time. The Marvels is also the first Marvel film that failed to cross the $100 million mark at the domestic box office. This means the sequel's entire big screen run didn't come close to matching the opening weekend of its predecessor, 2019's Captain Marvel, with its $153 million debut. And I talked about the movie not going to earn $100 million domestically in part 16 of my Who Will Be the Biggest Flop video series. However, the original adventure with Larson's Carol Danvers had extra momentum because of its prime release date between 2 of the biggest movies of all time, 2018's Avengers: Infinity War and 2019's Avengers: Endgame. Captain Marvel tapped out with $1.13 billion worldwide. I strongly suspect that had the original Captain Marvel movie not been shown immediately before Avengers: Endgame, that it wouldn't have made anywhere near as much as it did back in 2019. Still, the earnings of its sequel, The Marvels, is around $900 million less than the original, which also has to be some kind of a record. Disney CEO Bob Iger has addressed the movie's poor theatrical performance, suggesting that pandemic-related production restrictions ended up plaguing the final result. Quote, "The Marvels was shot during the coup," unquote, Iger recently said. Quote, "There wasn't as much supervision on the set, so to speak, where we have executives that are really looking over what's being done day after day after day," unquote. Bob Iger did 2 things in his statements. First, he's trying to blame the coup for the movie's failure, while all of the restrictions that were related to that were lifted a long time ago. Second, in a very backhanded manner, he's also blaming director Nia DaCosta without directly calling her out by name, because he doesn't want to be accused of being an ist by woke identity politics activists. He added that the studio's prior streak of billion-dollar behemoths has thrown off expectations about the potential of its movies. Iger said, quote, "We got to the point where if a film didn't do $1 billion in global box office, we were disappointed. That's an unbelievably high standard, and I think we have to get more realistic," unquote. Disney destroyed its own MCU heyday of movies all by itself by pushing too much woke identity politics into most of the movies that were released after Avengers: Endgame. Of those 11 movies, only 2 earned more than $1 billion, and those were the 2 Spider-Man movies entitled Spider-Man: Far From Home and Spider-Man: No Way Home. After those 2 movies, the next 2 most successful movies have been Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness and Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, and the latter made less money in terms of profits than its 2 predecessors. After those, the next 2 movies earned rather small profits: Thor: Love and Thunder and Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings barely broke even, and the movies Black Widow, Eternals, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, and The Marvels all flopped. 4 of the MCU's 5 flops all happened after Avengers: Endgame. The only one that precedes it is 2008's The Incredible Hulk. Box office analysts do not believe that superhero fatigue has once and for all plagued the masses. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, which earned $845 million, was a hit over the summer, And Deadpool 3, starring Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman, is expected to be a smash in 2024. But The Marvels is the clearest indication that comic book fans will no longer reliably show up to theaters just because the Marvel logo appears in front of a movie. And yes, that is absolutely true, just as it's true for Star Wars 2, which is a dead franchise thanks to Disney and Kathleen Kennedy. Disney still has several MCU movies on the horizon, but it may have to retool the future of Earth's mightiest heroes. The studio recently postponed Captain America: A Brave New World, Thunderbolts, and Blade to 2025 because of strike-related production delays. That leaves Deadpool 3 as the lone Marvel movie on next year's calendar. Hopefully the Merc with a mouth can save the day and the MCU. As a longtime fan of Deadpool myself, I will probably see Deadpool 3 in theaters next year, but I have no interest in seeing the others that are currently planned. But I am glad that Deadpool 3 will be the only MCU movie to be released next year, because until Kevin Feige and Bob Iger can find a viable path forward for the MCU, its future looks rather grim after Deadpool 3. Disney squandered and co-opted the popularity of the MCU to push woke identity politics, and as the saying goes, go woke, go broke. Thanks for watching today, and a huge thanks to everyone who has subscribed to our channel. We appreciate your support. If you enjoyed this video, please press the like button, and please feel free to share a comment. If you'd like to help support this channel, please press the red subscribe button, and please press the bell to receive notifications for new content. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and Twitter by clicking on the links in the description. Until next time, this is Out Loud Geek.